Atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where, as a wise man once said, you can't assalamu alaikum if you've never assalamu met 'em. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. Delighted you could join us tonight. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for a week where, if it were a phallus, the shaft would be May and the head would be April. 3 of one and 2 of the other, you might say. But instead, the host went straight to a dick metaphor. Take that for what you will, I guess. Dateline, Washington, Monday, 29 April. Representative, squad member, former middle school principal, and criminal defendant who asserted in court under oath that he does not understand how a fire alarm works, Jamal Bowman. Jesus, his introduction's getting almost as long as Kamala's at this point. He says he is totally 100% ass on fire in favor of bringing massive numbers of Palestinian refugees over to the United States to live here permanently and, it goes without saying, enrich the economic and cultural life of our nation in ways that are as innumerable as they are inestimable. Because if there's anything the first quarter of the 21st century has taught us, it's that the mass importation of foreign population groups brings absolutely no undesired consequences and only strengthens the social cohesion of any nation that is lucky, nay, blessed enough to experience it. Now, there may be some fans keeping score at home, racist, xenophobic monsters, I believe you're called, who are saying right now, wait, hold on a minute. If the countries that are right next door to the Palestinian territories want no part of any Palestinian diaspora coming to live there, and the Jordanians and the Egyptians have both been very consistent on that point for many decades now, why should we be eager to have them come live here in the United States? Well, Jamal Bowman has heard your concerns, and he thinks you should stop being such a racist, xenophobic monster. He would have liked to say more, but he was running late for his How to Work a Fire Alarm class that he is required to take as part of his plea agreement. Dateline, London, Tuesday, 30 April. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just gonna give it to you straight here. When I see a headline that reads, London swordsman arrested after vehicle ram stabbing, that fucking story is getting in the roundup, and that's goddamn all there is to it, really. It almost sounds like the name of a deleted track from an early Iron Maiden album. But in the interest of decency, we probably ought not to attach much levity to this particular incident, as a 14-year-old youth did tragically lose his life, and 4 other victims, including 2 London Metropolitan Police officers, were maimed to varying degrees of severity by the sword-wielding psychopath. And I just want to take this opportunity to say, how many more of these incidents do we need to see before we can start having a conversation about common sense sword reform and a ban on high-capacity scabbards? The assailant is said to be a 36-year-old Englishman with, quote-unquote, light skin, because, we're no longer allowed to ever talk about the race of violent criminals, and we have to avoid it even more assiduously when they are still on the loose and still pose a potential danger to the community, because we simply mustn't risk perpetuating negative stereotypes. And that's not my phrase, it's not even a paraphrase. That's what the actual London Metropolitan Police Department, the oldest and proudest police department in the whole civilized world, offered as the justification for their policy of, you are not allowed to know the race or nationality of the escaped murderer who is currently running loose in your neighborhood and might kill you. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, in a characteristic display of strong, decisive, swinging, dick, masculine alpha male energy, said, quote, "This is a shocking incident. My thoughts are with those affected and their families. I'd like to thank the emergency services for their ongoing response and pay tribute to the extraordinary bravery shown by police on the scene. Such violence has no place on our streets." End quote. Absolutely Churchillian. I think we can all agree. Dateline, Berlin, Wednesday, 1 May. Those crazy kids in the German radical left got International Workers' Day off to a swinging start this week by lovingly setting fire to 16 Amazon delivery trucks during an anti-fascist action demonstration in the German capital. And these idiots are the OG Antifa, in case you don't know. These are the guys our noodle-armed, pussy douchebag Antifa clowns in this country are always trying to emulate. In addition to the 5 protests that took place in Berlin on Tuesday night, a further 50 protests went off throughout the day on Wednesday. And how much you want to bet that in all of those 55 protests and all of those total combined protest hours, there weren't more than 4 or 5 chants ever chanted? Now, there might be some in the audience right now saying, but wait, why do the Berlin police and the German government allow this nonsense to go on? How come violent leftist maniacs can burn and loot and maraud and pillage the streets of a great European capital city with effective impunity? Well, if you're wondering that, and you may have not gotten the memo about how things work in Western Europe now, and most especially in Germany. If it looks like the leftist lunatic fringe can do whatever it wants, and the right, even the moderate right, even the centrist right, is effectively banned from existing, it's because that is the actual reality. And nearly all of it is down to the national self-loathing that Germany has made into a state religion, and the rest of Western Europe has eagerly sought to emulate. It's a matter of unquestioned orthodoxy now that the wars of 1914 to 1945 had as their sole proximate cause nationalism. And nationalism is bad and evil and wrong. Is it a nonsensically reductive way of viewing history? Yes, it very much is. But good luck trying to explain that to those 16 smoldering Amazon vans, because the communists, they just get a free pass, damn it. Dateline Washington, Thursday, 2 May. In this week's Things Only Joe Biden Would Ever Do segment, President and semi-animated cadaver Joe Biden has announced an initiative to increase the rate of voter registration among convicted criminals. I know it will come as a shock that the impetus for the initiative came from several dozen far-left NGOs. No, I'm not going to read out the list. Just suffice it to say every organization you would expect to be on it is on it. And is pretty nakedly designed to perform some desperate last-minute act of CPR on Biden's floundering, bumbling, stumbling, fumbling campaign. I mean, we've already seen the absurd lengths that this idiot is willing to go to keep, like, 20,000 happy Hamasnik terrorism fans in Dearborn, Michigan from straying off the Democrat plantation. But it looks like he's taking an altogether different and more innovative approach with this latest thing. Like, instead of working to keep your sharecroppers on the plantation, just expand the boundaries of the plantation and capture anybody who happens to be living on the land you have just appropriated, who, in this case, happen to be all convicted felons. And the guy who had to write the sales pitch? I can't decide if he had an easy job or a hard job. Hey, convicted felons, we just wanted to let you know you'd be a real natural fit here with the Democrat Party. I mean, do you just come right out and say it, or do you try and be subtle about it? Hi, I'm Joe Biden. Vote for me if you're a criminal. You won't be sorry. My wife Jill approves this message. Dateline, Ottawa, Friday, 3 May. If I asked you, what country is most likely to build the world's first national monument to non-normative sexuality, what would your answer be? Except it's kind of a stupid question, because we both know you would say Canada, and you wouldn't be wrong. Our wacky cousins up in America's top hat have voted to appropriate $13 million to build something they are calling the National 2S LGBTQI+ Monument in downtown Ottawa, just a stone's throw away from the Houses of Parliament, where its members can proudly gaze down in contentment on... How best to describe this? It's kind of like a giant white cylinder with a chunk torn out of the side, like a trash can that got attacked by a bear. Rumor has it that Prime Minister Justin Castro wanted to go the obvious route and make it look like a gigantic puckered anus, and was heard to exclaim, "Curses! Foiled again!" when he was informed that Palm Springs had already beaten him to the punch. Which seems like a weirdly violent sentence when you're talking about anuses, but the host digresses. Also, I've heard the asexuals are threatening to riot and burn down the whole thing for not having their letter included in the alphabet soup. Do you think they impaneled a dedicated government committee to decide which letters were in and which letters were out? Come on, what are we talking about? Of course they did. And the asexuals, they got left on the outside looking in. Which, I mean, doesn't that kind of come with the territory of being an asexual, if we're being honest? We'll have to revisit that question next week, for regrettably we arrive here at the end of the Roundup for this week, and with that, I transfer command to my industrious colleague, your lovely and talented co-host, the man who is to large furry hominids what O.J. Simpson is to knife murder, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.